Hello, everyone. My name is Colin Pierce. I'm one of the levy advisors for school-based investments at the Department of Education and Early Learning. And I'm here to bring you the pre-recorded info session for our Summer Learning Enhancement Request for Investment. Before we jump into things, just a little table setting here. Please have the RFI document available. You can bring up the PDF on your computer. You can have printed it out if you're really into paper. It's helpful to have as a reference, and throughout the presentation, you'll see we've got this little green box in the upper right-hand corner of the slide that'll tell you where in the document we are. Questions that come up, please note them down, and those that you'd like to have answered officially, please send to deelfunding@seattle.gov once the session is over, and use the subject line question_2023 Summer RFI. We'll be reminding you of this throughout the presentation of how to submit your questions, so if you forget, don't worry, there will be another chance to hear these instructions. So our agenda today will hopefully be relatively quick, but there is a lot of information in here. Part of what we're hoping you'll be able to do, since this is a recording, is pause, rewind, reread the slides, and really give yourself the time to understand the different pieces of this. If we go too fast, make sure you slow us down. So take some pauses, take some notes as you're in those pauses as well. The structure overall is that we're going to be starting broad and narrowing down. So we're going to talk a little bit about the overall Families Education Preschool and Promise levy that these summer investments are a part of. We'll be talking about the structure then of the Summer Learning Enhancement RFI, and then we'll be digging into specific sections in the application so that you can have a kind of guided Cliff's Notes walkthrough of it. And then finally, we'll give you some next steps and remind you about how to submit questions. So really broadly, back in 2018, the Families Education Preschool and Promise levy was passed. This is one in a long line of education-oriented levies that the city's put out over the last 30 years. And this particular levy is intended to invest in preschool through post-secondary with the aim of increasing access to and utilization of programs and services for historically underserved students. We'll dig in a little bit on the specific definitions of what we mean by historically underserved students in a little bit. The three strategies that are implemented through this levy are around equitable educational opportunities, high quality learning environments, and student and family supports. Some of you may be familiar with the overall goal and outcome of the FEP levy from previous RFI processes or partnering with us in the past. As some of you this may be the first time, but it's important that as we look at the summer enhancement investments, that we're grounding ourselves in it. The goal overall is that we partner with families and communities to achieve educational equity, close opportunity gaps, and build a better economic future for Seattle students. With the outcome that our student-focused populations achieve academically across the preschool to post-secondary continuum. On this slide, we have an overview of some of the high-level details and structure of the Summer Learning Enhancement investment. This can come in handy to have as a reference when you are completing your proposal, just to make sure that, that you are reminded of the purpose, some of the programming areas, etc. The purpose overall is to address issues of educational equity for youth most heavily impacted by the pandemic, providing them with learning opportunities that allow them to enter a new school year prepared to succeed. The other is promoting academic and non-academic skill development, supporting students up to and through graduation. CBOs and city agencies are eligible to apply. Schools are not directly eligible to apply, but we do encourage school partnerships with CBOs and city agencies as part of proposals. There are three main programming areas that we'll talk a little bit more about later in this presentation. Those are academic learning, social emotional learning and enrichment, and college and career readiness. You got to get your application in by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, March 22nd. Because we're trying to ensure that we have a timely turnaround and evaluation of these, that is a hard deadline. Make sure that you get those applications in by 5 at the latest. Highly recommend getting them in even earlier than that. We've got a pot of about $1 million, and that'll fund up to 20 proposals with a minimum proposed amount of $20,000, a maximum of $75,000. And this is going to be just for summer 2023. So as in past years with the Summer Learning Enhancement, we have some criteria for providers who will be selected for this. The first is a commitment to racial equity, cultural responsiveness, and addressing the needs of historically underserved communities. Next is demonstrated history of serving the focus students that you propose serving. And then experience achieving positive academic or non-academic outcomes through summer programming. One piece that is new this year is that the program location needs to be inside the city of Seattle and serve Seattle students at no cost. So ensure that as you're filling out the proposal, that you're indicating the way that your organization meets these various criteria. And again, this can be a useful reference to have at your side as you're completing your proposal. We at DEEL recognize that data collection and reporting for funders can often feel like a lot for particularly small organizations that are focused on providing direct services to youth and families and communities. We want to strike the right balance between being accountable for the use of public funds and also recognizing that our partners have limited capacity and really should be focusing on data that's meaningful to them. So what we're hoping for here with the Summer RFI is to focus on 3 primary areas for data collection. The first is student enrollment, to make sure that we're getting as many students as we can connected with high quality summer experiences. Then take a look at student attendance to make sure that we're maximizing the benefit of those high quality programs. And then we'll be taking a look at impact at the end of the programming by using an asset-based survey, which you'll be learning a little bit more about later on. I mentioned earlier that we'd be diving in a little bit deeper to our definition of what a focused student is or what focused student populations are. And here we are. So turn to page 3 of the RFI. You'll find this text there, and you can follow along on the slide as well. We fund services that are supporting students from historically underserved communities, and that's those who are experiencing systemic inequities in educational achievement due to race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status, refugee and immigrant status, English proficiency, familial situations, housing status, sexual orientation, or other factors, African American, Black, Latinx, Native American, Pacific Islander, underserved Asian populations, and other students of color, students not yet meeting grade level learning standards on local, district, and state assessments, or making insufficient academic progress in their core courses, and students in need of a variety of supports, whether it's socially, emotionally, academically, as a result of the pandemic. While you are considering how to set up and plan your application, be thinking about the specific student populations that your organization serves and how they fit within this definition of focused students. It's a really broad net that we've cast, and it's important that you're speaking and not just lumping all of these different student communities and student identities into one bucket, but really thinking who are the specific populations that my organization is best poised to serve. Continuing along on page 3 in the RFI document, the 3 program areas that we're asking organizations to propose services or programs in are academic learning, social emotional learning and enrichment, or college and career readiness. Academic learning really is going to be a focus on academics in any subject area, and ways to provide additional instruction and learning time. Could be tutoring, it could be credit recovery. It depends on what the focus population that you're working with has demonstrated needs in. As far as social emotional learning and enrichment, that could be what we call 21st century skills or soft skills, transdisciplinary skills, also social emotional learning and enrichment. That could be artistic, athletic, any kind of enrichment in areas of interest for students. And then college and career readiness could involve one-on-one counseling, providing a variety of resources for college application. Could be about developing awareness of college or the skills needed to enter college, and exposure to career, post-secondary opportunities. We also recognize that these categories can overlap sometimes. So it's okay to be proposing services that fit into more than one of these categories, and you'll have an opportunity to identify not just a primary program area of focus, but a secondary one if it's applicable as well, and that's in the application. So like I just mentioned, you can identify a primary focus area and, if applicable, a secondary one. And underneath each of those in the cover sheet, you'll see a list of outcomes that you can check for the programming you're proposing. If the student outcomes that you're planning on having an impact on aren't listed, or if there are some that you want to add in addition to the ones that are listed, there's a space below that for you to do that. So take a look there, do some thinking about exactly how you want to impact student outcomes, and make sure you're recording it under the appropriate program area. All proposals we receive will be evaluated using the scoring criteria that are included in the RFI document. But in addition to those, we have a set of priorities that we use to guide our evaluation process. First, as we've mentioned before, is that we're funding up to 20 proposals. That's not a guarantee that 20 will be funded. That's just a maximum. We are hoping that the successful proposals reflect a diversity in programming, a diversity of students, and a diversity of providers, with priority given to communities who are most impacted by the continuing effects of the pandemic. We want our applicants to leverage strong partnerships between organizations and school communities, and that proposals be responsive to student needs through culturally responsive approaches. We also encourage applicants to leverage other FEP levy investment types to maximize impact and advance student outcomes. So if, for example, a school might be receiving school-based investments and this is going to maximize impact, then absolutely we encourage that. Similar with the opportunity and access investment, if there are ways that these funds can enhance the work that's happening through another investment area, we absolutely encourage that. These are factors that are also useful to keep in mind as you're filling out the proposal, ensuring that you're demonstrating that your plans meet some of these priorities. Whoa, okay, this is a lot of text on this slide. Absolutely understand if you need to pause to take it in a little bit. This is just to inform you of some of the documentation that your organization will need to submit if you are successful. That includes business license numbers, W-9 forms that were recently signed, an Accord certificate of insurance, and additional insured endorsement. And then commercial general liability or an equivalent insurance coverage for the premises and operations, products and completed operations, personal advertising injury, contractual and stopgap employer's liability, and the minimum limit of liability needs to be $1 million for each occurrence of combined single limit bodily injury and property damage, $1 million for each occurrence of abuse and molestation coverage, $2 million for products completed, operations aggregate, $2 million for general aggregate, $1 million for each accident, disease, policy, limit, disease, each employee stopgap, or employer's liability. Automobile liability insurance and workers' compensation insurance. So it would be a good idea, given the number of documents here that you'll need to submit, that you have those ready to go as you are pulling together everything for this application. So we're about to jump into the application itself and walk you through the different pieces of the application document. But now that we've got a broad understanding of what the Summer Learning Enhancement is about, here are some good questions for you to consider either on your own or with a colleague as you are brainstorming how to complete the application. The first is, which of the focus student populations that we've named are you planning on serving, and how many of them do you plan to serve? Which of the programming areas are aligned with the types of services the organization provides or is capable of providing? Looking at current summer programs that are planned, whether run by your own organization or by another or by a school, what are ways that this application can enhance or extend those current summer programs rather than just starting one from scratch, though that's fine as well. And the last is, how are you going to be working with the school community you plan to serve so that your programming is coordinated with what they're planning on doing, both from a logistical and from a thematic standpoint? And now we get to the good stuff, the application. Please turn to page 9 in the RFI document to take a look and follow along with what we're going to be talking about next. And here are the application sections. Before you turn this recording off and run screaming from the room, I know it looks like a lot. It is not as much as it seems. A number of these sections are actually just yes or no questions that you check off. So stick with me. I promise you it isn't as bad as it looks. The first part of the application is going to be the cover sheet. And the cover sheet is asking just for really basic information about your organization, in addition to a broad overview of the programs and services that you're proposing. So that includes who you're serving, when you're serving them, what the program areas and outcomes are, the amount requested, and then how those funds are going to be supporting your organization. You'll be submitting this online. And you'll get an email confirmation once it's been received. Section 1 is going to be the first of 3 narrative portions of this application. And this one is focused on experience and demonstrated ability, really on your organization's history and the basis of your ability to provide the services you're proposing. We're capping this at 1 page. I know that it can be challenging sometimes to work with less space than more, but all the more reason to provide simple, straightforward responses to some of this. You don't need to write a novel. Really just plain language is absolutely fine. Should be size 11 font, and that's actually going to be the same for all of these sections. I don't need to call it out over and over again, but size 11 font for this, and you can do single or double spaced depending on how much room you want to write. This is going to include 3 broad categories of information about your organization: overview, prior experience, and partnerships, and we'll walk through those right now. In the overview of the organization portion, we want you to include any relevant history of serving the focus students that you're planning on serving with the Summer Learning Enhancement, the different types of programming offered, and any other relevant high-level information about your organization. When you're talking about your prior experience serving the focus student populations that you're planning on supporting with the Summer Learning Enhancement, we're interested in hearing about, like, how are you identifying student and community needs? How are you using data to inform the continuous improvement of your services and programming? And then what results have you been able to achieve in the past? And when talking about your organization and your partnerships, we're interested in hearing about how you're partnering not just with schools, but also with young people, with community members, and other organizations. And for this, we're asking for a brief illustrative example. So a particular partnership that feels like it demonstrates your capacity and your approach to partnership. And while Section 1 provides context and history for us to understand your organization, Section 2 is going to be the meat of this application. This is where you describe the program that you're planning on funding using the Summer Learning Enhancement dollars. This should be no more than 3 pages. As with all of this, make sure that you're using the provided template. This is going to be brief as well, so simple, straightforward responses are appreciated here. The 4 areas of information that we're looking for here are an overview of your program, the program outcomes, how you will be recruiting and retaining students, and then your budget. When providing the overview of your program, give any logistical details that you know already. So where is it going to happen? What's the schedule going to be on a daily basis, over how many weeks? And describe the activities and learning objectives that you're planning on running through this program or through these services. We also are asking for a rationale of program efficacy. So how do you know that you're meeting needs that students, families, and communities already have? And how do you know that your services and programs are the best way to meet those needs? When describing your program outcomes, be thinking about how youth are going to be benefiting from the programming and services that you're providing in building them towards those outcomes that you selected. Also, tell us about how you're planning on collecting feedback or data regarding your programming that'll tell you how effective you've been and what results you've achieved. As any of you who have run summer programming before know very well, recruitment and retention are key. And so we're asking you to tell us about your plans for identifying the right students to bring into your program, and how once you've enrolled them, you're going to ensure you're keeping them coming back. These directly relate to the data collection and reporting that we're asking for around enrollment and attendance. Section 3 addresses cultural responsiveness. Here at DEEL, we have an ongoing internal conversation every time we develop an RFI about whether it's important to signal how central cultural responsiveness is by dedicating its own section in an application, or whether we expect that to be embedded across all sections of an application and all elements of an organization's programming or services. Here, I think we've got a bit of a both-and approach. So you are encouraged to embed cultural responsiveness in all sections of this application. And this section is a space for you to be able to speak to it more specifically. Given the space constraints that you have in other parts of the application, this is an opportunity to really highlight the ways that your organization and your programming make cultural responsiveness central to the work that you do. So this should be no more than 1 page, and all of the same old formatting requirements apply here as well. It takes the form of 2 broad categories of information we're looking for. First is experience. This is a space for you to speak to how your organization in the past has developed culturally responsive services and programming that can include serving students from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, students who are multilingual, refugee and immigrant populations, or programming or approaches to support culturally and linguistically diverse students and families. If you have limited experience with this, that's totally fine, but we'd like you to describe the steps that you plan on taking to ensure that your services and your programming are culturally responsive to the student populations that you plan on serving. And while your experience talks a lot about your past with culturally responsive services, we're interested in hearing also about your commitment. So your current and your future plans for incorporating anti-racist practices and social justice into your programming, and the ways that you are committed to understanding the cultural and community backgrounds of the students that you're serving as well. And with that, we are done with the narrative portions of the application. The remaining 3 sections are all going to be yes or no. And in all 3 sections, a yes response is required to pass a technical compliance check. So if you plan on saying no to any of these sections, you may want to reconsider submitting an application in the first place. So section 4, labor harmony, this is really just for you to say you are committed to continuing programming through avoiding any labor disputes there might be. And that regardless, you are going to make sure that students receive the programming funded by this investment. If you have some sort of a standard labor practices and policies document, please feel free to include that. But if not, just checking yes is totally fine. Section 5 is the asset-based survey. I had referenced this before, and this is going to be a survey that is co-developed between you and folks from DEEL in a collaborative process. It's going to be provided virtually, and you can incorporate other questions that you might have for students that your organization is particularly interested in, alongside the ones that we're co-designing and tailoring to each program through collaboration between DEEL and your staff. Here you just need to indicate that you're committed to administering it. So again, response is yes or no. Yes is required to pass technical compliance. And finally, section 6, this is another yes/no checkbox. Here, we're just asking you to indicate your commitment to following King County's guidance for child care administrators when it comes to health protocols. If you have documentation that your organization has developed, please attach it here. If not, no worries. As with the previous 2, a yes response is required if you want to pass technical compliance. So this is how your applications are going to be scored. We had mentioned the broad evaluation priorities, but this is where the points are going to come into play. And as you can see from this table, only 3 of the sections, the 3 narrative sections, are points bearing in this application. And that is experience and demonstrated ability, program delivery and impact, and cultural responsiveness. You can see through the weighting of it that section 2 is the most heavily weighted and really is the heart of your application, those proposed programs and services. The final 3, as I mentioned, are just yes or no, with a no being disqualifying for the entire application. There's more information on the scoring criteria in Appendix A. And speaking of appendices, we love an appendix here at DEEL. We want to make sure that you have all the information. So we have a bunch of them for our RFI document here. The first is evaluation and scoring criteria. This is going to give you a more detailed breakdown of how your application is going to be scored. Appendix B, payment and reporting. We know this is a tight timeline, and that many organizations, particularly smaller ones, don't have a ton of money they can front to support their programming. So this outlines a series of payment points across the life of this particular funding opportunity and how it's going to be paid out, whether this is performance pay or whether this is deliverables, but to make sure that you have different percentages of your funding coming at different points throughout the summer. The performance pay table just shows you how we pay out on a sliding scale for performance pay. In this case, it's going to be mostly around your enrollment, attendance, and the asset-based survey. In terms of reporting expectations, this just walks you through the different deliverables and data reporting that needs to be submitted and the format that it needs to be submitted in. And finally, in Appendix E, there's information about Seattle Public Schools and how CBOs can partner with Seattle Public Schools through a data sharing agreement. We're going to be asking any of the successful applicants to go through this process so that they're able to obtain student level information. And the partnership office at SPS does a great job of walking CBOs through that process. In particular, Jennifer Chamberlain, whose email is in Appendix E, is a great contact to reach out to. Same with Sarah Perez Hamilton. This is a good thing to have, particularly if your organization is planning on continuing to work with Seattle Public School students beyond the life of this Summer Learning Enhancement Levy. So please do look into that. I would recommend getting started on it as you're submitting your application. Is not a terrible idea, so you have it ready to go in time for programming. And here is the information I'm sure you're all wondering about. You know you need to turn the application in on March 22nd, but what happens afterwards? We are really trying to make sure that we give you as much advance notice as possible in order to plan effective and robust programming for students in the summer. So our application review, scoring, and deliberation process is going to take place between March 23rd and April 13th. And from there, we will be notifying applicants on Friday, April 14th. This gives you more lead time than we had in the past. We're really excited to be able to run this, and the folks organizing the RFI, I think, have done a great job in speeding things up and ensuring that you have as much lead time as possible. I've spoken a couple of times also about technical compliance in this presentation, and that's the set of criteria that are kind of a minimal bar that you need to clear in order for your application to be even considered. The first is it needs to be submitted on time, electronically. You'll be submitting it via email, and the checklist is going to be completed as an online form. You need to include all of the required sections. For sections 1 through 6, use the template that is found on the website where you likely found this recording. And that needs to be typed. It can be single or double spaced with size 11 font, pages numbered, and needs to be all submitted together as a single document, either in PDF or Word format. We here at DEEL want to make sure that we're funding successful applications, and part of that is ensuring that you and your organization have the technical assistance that you need in order to complete a successful application. You don't need to show up to any of the TA that's provided. We do highly recommend that you listen to and follow along in this recorded information session, which, if you're hearing me say this, you're already doing. So good work. We do recommend, though, if you feel like you have any questions or need any support throughout the process of the application, that you show up to at least one of the TA sessions so that you can understand the requirements, the different sections, etc. This session is coming out on Tuesday, March 7th, but the first synchronous TA session is coming on Thursday, March 9th from 3 to 5 p.m. It'll be a virtual meeting, and you'll be able to find the link at the website that's hyperlinked above on this slide. The second one's happening Tuesday, March 14th, also 3 to 5 p.m. Also, you'll be able to find the link at the DEEL website. There is a cutoff for submitting questions. to that email address you know so well, deelfunding@seattle.gov. That's Thursday, March 16th at 5 p.m. We have a cutoff to ensure that everyone has access to the official answers to your questions ahead of the submission deadline. While the technical assistance sessions are optional, we want to make sure that if you plan on attending, you're prepared. So first off, any appropriate staff is able to attend. Please, if they haven't already reviewed this info session, have them take a look at it. Also, please take a moment to explore the website and familiarize yourself with the different documents related to this funding opportunity. And so that can be found at this URL, seattle.gov/education/funding-opportunities. And then bring any questions that you come up with as you're going over those documents to the technical assistance sessions. You're welcome to submit them via email ahead of time as well. And that is it. I know it's been a lot of information. Hopefully you've been able to pause and rewind and rewatch pieces so that you can get it all clear. But what we didn't cover and what we weren't able to help you understand with this info session, we'll be able to clear up for you in the TA sessions, and we look forward to seeing you there.